distress together with the desire to alleviate it. I have not always been the most compassionate person. When I was 3 years old and my mom was pregnant with my second sibling, I prayed to God and told him how excited I was to meet my new brother, and also that I was ready to return my old sister, Johanna. At this point, Johanna was 1, and when she wasn't slobbering all over me, she was stealing my toys and all of Mom and Dad's attention. When I told my mom about this conversation that I had with God, she was distressed in my impatient and selfish nature. Although I love my sister now very much, I still could use work in the compassion department, and so this is the virtue that I decided to pursue during my capstone experience. I thought that the best place to start with this would be through helping others, and so in the fall I volunteered at Swedish Hospital, where I met a girl my own age who was going through what would be one of the hardest times of her life. Except for her newborn child and her doctors and nurses, she was alone. Her mom was undergoing chemotherapy to treat her skin cancer, and her dad had walked out on them when she was young. I didn't know much about this girl the first day that I walked through those hospital doors, except that she was going through a tough time and she needed a friend. And I thought that I would go in and help her. What I didn't know at the time was that she would help me just as much, if not more. When I first met her, she was so kind and loving to me, even though she was so clearly struggling and concerned and vulnerable. She was attempting to raise a child on her own without any experience, and she was only 19. The first day that we met, I told her that I went to Front Range Christian School, and she told me that she had once been a Christian and believed in God, although she felt that he had abandoned her and she had ended up turning her back on him. She asked me, how can I believe that there is a God that loves me when my life looks like this? I had no idea how to answer her question. I didn't want to just rattle off some insignificant verses and tell her that I would pray for her and that everything would be okay. I instead chose to avoid the topic, and she seemed fine with that. So the next 3 days we watched movies together, and we played with her baby, and we talked about anything other than God. The fourth day I knew that I had to bring up the topic because I was afraid, and I knew that that was what God was calling me to do. So I asked her if I could share with her my story, and she said yes. So I told her that my freshman year of high school I'd been in a terrible car accident that left me broken and defeated, and my 4 little siblings and I fighting for our lives. I told her that I didn't remember much, except for not being able to see right after the car accident and screaming and crying coming from the back seat where my little siblings were. I told her that I'd never been more afraid in my life, and that a first responder had come and sat with me at my window while I was waiting for an ambulance to come get me, and that the first thing I'd said to him was I'd asked him to pray with me. And he'd gotten uncomfortable and told me that he's not a Christian and he doesn't believe in God. And I said, I don't care, I just want you to pray with me. So he reluctantly obliged and held my hand as I said a prayer. And later on that day, while I was in the hospital and my siblings and I had all been told that we would be okay, he came back to visit me and told me that my faith had astounded him and that he wanted the same thing that I had and that he would go to church with his family. And to this day, they attend Foothills Church. I told her that I had changed his life and she was changing mine in the same way, and that it took me a long time to see it, but I could finally see the way that the car accident had worked for good in my life, even though I'd suffered initially. She and I cried together and we prayed together, and she ended up naming her baby after me because she always wanted to remember the time that we spent together at Swedish Hospital. In the spring, I continued the theme of compassion into my shadowing opportunity at Ascent Physical Therapy, where I shadowed a physical therapist who would heal people physically and emotionally. I saw her work with a patient named Nina who works with disabled adults, and one day Nina had been driving a van down the highway, and one of her adults who'd been sitting in the passenger seat had gotten angry and struck her in the face, and she ended up rolling the van and getting in a car accident. And since then, she's been afraid of men because of the man that hit her, and she's not only suffered physical injuries, but also emotional trauma and distress. I saw Lindsay, the physical therapist, work with her not only on healing her body, but also on healing her emotionally and mentally. And I saw Lindsay be patient and loving and kind. And that's exactly the same mentality and attitude that I want to have in the workspace. So this was a really impactful experience for me to see. I learned that compassion is something that comes from within, something that no one should have to tell you how to be or remind you to be. I learned that compassion is easily forgotten as we tend to get wrapped up in our own sufferings and shortcomings and forget about others. I saw that everyone has already suffered, is suffering currently, or will suffer at some point in their lives. And that rather than isolate ourselves from others, it's easier to join together and love others and help each other through tough times. Paul reminds us of this in a verse from Philippians, saying, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above ourselves." Life knocks the wind out of us sometimes, and it's our calling to pick people up and help them catch their breath, just as we would hope that they would do for us in times of trouble. The second lesson that I learned is perseverance. In the fall, I had planned to volunteer at Craig Hospital rather than Swedish and talk to a number of patients and doctors rather than just the one nurse and one patient that I encountered during my week. This plan fell apart when they ran out of volunteer slots to give me in the fall and told me that I would be able to volunteer after Christmas break, which was too late for me and my fall experience. So I desperately scrambled to find a volunteer position somewhere else, and rather than give up and give my presentation on my own shortcomings and how I'd had a great plan if it had gone together, I decided to rally and do something else. I ended up meeting someone who showed me what perseverance is. And not just perseverance, but selfless perseverance, as she was doing it for her child and not for herself. She encouraged me to persevere through tough times as well, as I was so afraid the first day that I met her of what I would say and how I would act, and then how I would answer her questions about God. But I ended up persevering through this with her, and together we established a sense of clarity in each other's lives. I also witnessed perseverance at the physical therapy clinic, where I saw people literally pushing through injuries to get through the good that waits just around the corner for them. Perseverance is a mentality that's required to get through life, because good times are waiting if we can push through, if we can be strong enough to push through the bad. The third and final lesson that I learned is to take risks and have an all-in attitude. I was so afraid at the beginning of my experience of failure. At the beginning of senior seminar this year, Mr. Spector and Mr. Butler gave us a short list of requirements, but mostly said, "What do you want, and how are you going to pursue that?" And I had no idea how to go about pursuing my virtue. I didn't even know where to start. I didn't want to fail Bible, and I was more afraid of failing Bible than I was of my AP biology class. But I ended up jumping all into every opportunity that I had, and it rewarded me tremendously. So I'd encourage each of you to approach life with the same all-in attitude, because you never know what benefits it will have. I learned that time management is essential, as is having a backup plan. I learned the importance of integrity and courage. Rather than make up a story about something that you hadn't really done, or just fall back into your fear and not do anything at all, I learned that it's important to take the risk and make the jump and do your best. I also learned the value of human interaction, because there's nothing more important than building relationships with others and loving them just as you yourself would wish to be loved. Society is a selfish and individualistic place, and it is important for compassion to shine through in moments of selfishness and pride, and it shouldn't be forgotten. The book of Ecclesiastes says this best: "Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will not withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken." We are not meant to go through life alone, and we are meant to treat others the way that we want to be treated. This reminds me of a time when I was 10 and my mother was deployed to Afghanistan for a year, leaving my dad in Colorado with 5 young kids to raise. Our friends, neighbors, and a family joined together and provided meals for us, childcare, drove us to soccer practices and Girl Scout meetings, paid for a limo to pick my mom up from the airport when she did come home, and sometimes gave space for Dad so that he could be alone without 5 small kids breathing down his neck. They also sent care packages to Mom while she was in Afghanistan and sent her the essentials that she needed to remind her of home. Selfless acts can change lives. Even though you might not witness personally what your selfless and caring attitude for others might do for them, it can change their life. So I would encourage you all to remind yourselves daily to be compassionate and love others. You might change someone's life. I know that mine has been changed by the compassion that I've witnessed throughout this experience and the people that I've met. My life has been truly touched all throughout this experience, and without it, I would not be the person that I am today. I got to witness suffering and people attempting to find the beauty in their suffering, and I learned that this cannot be done alone, that community and companionship and compassion and love are what we need to survive. It doesn't hurt to be nice to someone, so I encourage you to always be nice. And for the juniors in this room, as you prepare to enter your last year of high school and journey through a capstone experience of your own, I would encourage you to keep an open mind and a willing heart. Even in times of despair and discouragement, I would encourage you that this is worthwhile and something that you'll remember for the rest of your life. I would tell you to be prepared for the way that you will be amazed and changed and impacted by the people that you will meet and the experiences that you will have. Don't be afraid to take the risk. This is your last chance to be brave while you're safe at home and at Front Range. While you have your parents and your teachers to fall back on. To keep a journal, take pictures, talk to strangers, and tell your story. I can't wait to hear about all of your adventures next year. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions that I can answer? Yeah.
Why did you choose this topic in particular?
I want to do something in the medical field, and I have always wanted to help people, I guess. So I think that I knew that I wanted to start at a hospital and kind of work on my compassion, and it kind of just, once the ball got rolling, I kind of just went with it.
Did the experience help you choose what to do next year?
Yeah, it did. I'm going to be majoring in neuroscience and probably go pre-med, I think. Yeah.
So what was the worst thing about the whole experience?
I think today. Honestly. Yeah, I mean, yeah, today. Yeah.
So what was the second worst?
The second worst thing? I think the first day that I went to the hospital, I was by myself and I didn't know anyone super well. I knew a nurse there, but I didn't have anyone to go with me, and I felt alone, I guess, and scared. That was the second worst thing. Yeah.
So if you could go back and change any of what you did, what would it be?
I think that I would have started my time at the hospital earlier so that I could have spent more time with the girl that I was with. Okay. You guys are dismissed.